Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the UK Film Review Podcast. This is a filmmaker interview, and not only am I joined by one filmmaker, I'm joined by two. A film we reviewed last year, The One Note Man. You may have read my review on the website. It was very glowing. Me and Brian had lots of positive things to say about it, so when we were asked to see if we wanted to chat to the guys, we were very, very happy. So I am very pleased to announce I'm joined by George Siougas and Michael Stevenson from the film. Hello, chaps. How are you?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Chris. Great to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being in touch and coming and also just promoting your film with us. Like you've been very great at communicating with us and letting us know about your amazing film. Everyone knows I love it. I'm such a big fan. So I have some questions from Brian. He WhatsApped me this morning a couple of questions. One of the first ones was how to pronounce your surname, George, by the way. It was like, yeah, look.
Everybody asks that question. Don't worry. Mike learned how to pronounce it 2 days ago.
And I've known him for 3 years.
Is it that one where you're kind of just a bit too afraid to ask? Like it's gone on too long now. You're like, oh, it's gonna be.
I finally had to say, look, enough, man. Look, let's just talk about this.
I always went with the first variation that someone gave me, and it stuck. So.
Well, I mean, I was tempted to go fully on with just George through the whole thing, but I thought that would do such a disservice. I thought he needs to have his name mentioned. George Siougas. Okay, guys. So The One Note Man. I feel that as we've got you on the podcast, George, it'd be great for you to give us what's the official synopsis when you tell someone you've made a film, because you're the writer director, right? How do you describe this film when you describe the plot?
Love at first note is I think the briefest synopsis I can give. The plot is it's about a musician who lives a very ordered and mired life, and he loves his routine, and he does things a very certain way, and he just lives his life down a very safe path. And this musician's job is to play one note at the orchestra. And so that's the central idea. And this idea came to me from a 1921 illustration by H.M. Bateman titled The One Note Man. And it just sparked a lot of questions about this guy. Why does he play one note? Is he depressed? Is he happy? Is he going through loss? Well, obviously he can play more notes, but is it his choice? So I think we make films to ask questions and not necessarily to answer them. And the main question the film asks is if you are comfortable in your routine in your life and it does get interrupted, what do you do? How do you handle that change? Do you step into the unknown and you live a life of uncertainty and face the dangers, the perils of this uncharted territory? Or do you fold back to your comfort zone?
And so the fabulous Jason Watkins plays the character who is credited as One Note Man, right? You didn't give him a name. What were your kind of instructions to Jason? Because obviously, bearing in mind what you've just said in terms of that, asking lots of questions about who this is, was there a kind of clear brief that you gave to Jason and said that this is what I think this character is, or was there more of like his interpretation of it?
I'm never too quick to talk too much to actors, especially an actor of Jason's caliber, because I'm scared I might mess it up. I really want to see what the actor will bring to the table. So with Jason, of course, because he's such an incredible actor and in such control of his craft, using his entire body, as all great actors should do, to communicate the script, not only his face. It was literally a matter of fine-tuning. Of course, we discussed the thing, and my job as a writer, because I wrote this also, I'm not just directing it, I wrote it, is to present the actor with intention. So my goal while writing it was for that intention to be crystal clear on the page. And then it's the actor's job to interpret that. So with Jason, it was just a joy to see this character come to life. And he's just phenomenal. He was able to communicate every single part of this character and this story 25 times every second, 25 frames a second. And it was just a miracle to watch and to work with. He's such a lovely man, also very generous, very open.
It's a fabulous performance, and I think one of the questions that me and Brian both had, and maybe Michael, you know about this. How did the casting happen? I mean, how did you get this caliber of talent? Because not only obviously you've got Jason, you've got Paul Barber in there, and Ian McKellen doing the narration. Do you guys know these people? Do they owe you favors? Like, what's happening? How did you get them in there?
Well, I think everybody reacted to the script very well. Isn't that true, Mike? Everybody seemed to love the script. And no, Paul and Ian came from Mike. So maybe Mike should talk about that.
I think with all these sort of little indie projects, you can spend years trying to get them off the ground, and then all of a sudden one person bites and the rest sort of starts to snowball and fall into place. And I think definitely what happened for us is that before I came on board, George had approached Stephen Warbeck about composing the music, because the music is obviously such a central part of the project. So it was essential that we had the right composer on right at the beginning, and thankfully George had already done that spade work, and Stephen had fallen in love with the script and really wanted in. So he'd already given his backing of the film and that he was going to compose it. And then once you've got a name like Stevens attached to it as a Academy Award winning composer, we found that, especially in Jason's case, that when we sent him the pitch and the script, not only did he love the script, but it was very apparent to him that if Stephen Warbeck was attached to it, then it was definitely something he needed to listen to and consider, because he'd worked with Stephen many years ago in London, and so they've known each other for a while on and off. So he was very taken by the idea that Stephen was attached, and then of course when you get Jason attached, then other people start to listen as well. So I think it was incredible, really, how many times we got our first choice, and I think that's all simply because we started at the top. We got Stephen attached, Jason then listened, Paul Barber wanted in, and the rest went from there.
But it's interesting how Mike includes Stephen in this question about casting, because to us, the right musician, the choice of the right musician was as important as the choice of the right actor, because the music is the third character in this film. So that was a super, super important moment, having Stephen come on board. Absolutely. But then Louisa, I knew from Emmerdale. I'd worked with Louisa before, and she could play the violin, which was very important to me. I wanted that level of authenticity. I didn't want audiences to go, they're not really playing. I can see them. People who know music or who can read music, who can play music, like yourself. I want them to feel that they're watching the real thing, which they are. Everybody's playing for real. Even Jason, who who learned to play the violin, the bassoon, his one note, of course, and his solo in the end. He's actually, the sound that's coming out of the bassoon isn't Jason's, but he is miming everything perfectly. We had a bassoon expert on set who said, I totally buy this. He's playing. So that's just testament to how amazing Jason was. Louisa could play the violin, and Crystal, who plays the conductor, also one of my favorite characters in the piece.
She's terrific. She's so terrific. Good.
Yeah. She's based, one of my favorite movies is Fantasia, Disney's Fantasia. And she's very much inspired by the wizard in that Mickey Mouse sketch.
Yeah.
When he's carrying with the broomsticks and he's carrying the water, and she's the wizard, really, version of Fantasia in this film, and like a scolding parent. She tells him off so many times, but then when she realizes that he's got guts and he just needs a bit of help, there she is. So it's divine intervention, really, which is very ancient Greek, very Greek ancient drama. Because I'm Greek.
Hence the trouble I had with your name. Yeah, I think the richness of this film is one of the things that me and Brian really took to, and obviously a film without dialogue or kind of without dialogue, there's narration, and it's mostly without dialogue, that you are relying a lot on the physical elements. So yeah, the actors knowing or looking like they know how to play, and everything clicked. There wasn't a sense of like, okay, yeah, you're putting this together. With that, one of the things I was wondering, and Brian asked as well, was what was the rehearsals for this like? Was there a lot, or was it kind of quite quick?
Yeah, there was a day of rehearsals for the orchestral piece, the orchestral section of the film in the theater. And it was more technical than performance based. So it was more about Crystal working with the conductor who was with her, a real conductor who was teaching her how to do it realistically and well. It was more about pacing and beats and all that, just familiarizing ourselves with the music and the timing of it, because timing is important anyway in anything we direct and we make, but so much more in this because there's music involved, and music is all about time, keeping time. So rehearsal had more to do with that, and also it enabled me to find some shots, because I had a shot plan. I storyboarded the whole movie, and I had a shot plan for that first reveal of the One Note Man. I conceal his face up until the moment he plays the one note, just like Indiana Jones. a great trick learned from Steven Spielberg. And so that was more to do with me discovering some shots like that reveal, that boom down, where the camera booms down, reveals his face from the note to him. So it was more like that rather than performance. No, otherwise, no. We discovered everything, which is how I love to work anyway. I don't like rehearsing too much anyway. It's about casting the right people, and then let's go to work.
I definitely have to pay tribute as well to the orchestra. Like the rehearsal process that we had was specifically for Louisa, Crystal, and Jason. So it was just the three of them in a room. But what was amazing is that because we had real musicians on stage for the orchestra, they're an incredible bunch of people, musicians who can just look at a piece of paper and start playing. And rehearsals for an actor that can often take time in terms of how we find the scene and all that nonsense. Musicians can just do it. They just look at a piece of paper, and I don't know, it still baffles me to this day, but within seconds they all start playing this one piece. So in terms of rehearsals, they were really accommodating of the fact that Jason was playing the bassoon part of the piece and whatever, and they were just brilliant to work with, weren't they? But that was one element you kind of just, you felt in safe hands. At any point they could pick up from a certain point, and it would all just happen. It was brilliant.
But Chris, also to see, picking up from what Mike said, to see Steven work with his orchestra while we were recording that piece, which we used to playback, filmed the orchestral pieces in the theater. We pre-recorded that, but you used before the shoot. And watching him work with his musicians and really work with them as if he's a director, talking to them about what he wants to feel from their musical performance, was such an eye-opening moment for me. It was marvelous to watch.
It's interesting because you mentioned earlier about starting with the music and starting with that crucial casting of that, and obviously the character that you selected was this musician. So as a writer director, what's your kind of process for that in terms of because are you kind of musically? Do you have a big musical background, or was that something you kind of felt? Look, do you know what? I'll just get the right person to sort that out. Like, how confident did you feel bringing that into this story?
First of all, the first thing that happens is this: when I hear an idea and I think of an idea, is a feeling I get in my stomach. It's really a physical reaction to an idea that excites me, and that's always the first thing. I do have a bit of a musical background because I grew up in a house where my stepfather was a very well known director and musician and playwright and poet. So I grew up, and my mother was a doctor. So so that's the science. Science meets the arts, which is kind of what cinema is. And my stepfather, I grew up in this environment of actors and sets and music played in the house, and actors coming over, musicians. So there was music everywhere constantly. Now, I hated that when I was a kid. I wanted to run away from all that, the bohemian kind of lifestyle and all that. But I realize now, of course, that it had a massive subconscious impact on me. And I absolutely adore music. I love soundtracks. I realize that you can listen to the music without watching the movie, but you can't watch the movie without listening to the music. And when the marriage of director and conductor works, it's just the outcome is magical. The director may put the tear in the audience's eye, but the conductor will cause it to drop. And the greatest, there are so many examples, but of course, Spielberg and John Williams is, I think, the shiniest example. Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann, and then so many other examples. So music is a huge part of my life.
Fantastic. And I think, hats off for knowing about that relationship, because the film, as we were chatting earlier, has done incredibly. And I think that's due to the fabulous way you've put it together. So it's been shortlisted for an Oscar and shortlisted for a BAFTA. Michael, you were saying that's only 2 films this year have achieved that?
Officially, sorry to interrupt, officially they say long listed for a BAFTA, although that list is shorter than the short list of the Oscars.
We're saying shortlist.
Go
we don't
figure.
care what you say, BAFTA. We're saying shortlist.
Okay.
You said it for us.
Yeah.
You said it. Yeah. One of only 2 films, which is crazy. The Oscar shortlist this year, the competition for the Oscars this year is more fierce than it's ever been, I think, because for the first year we have streamers that are in the mix. So we've got films that have been made for Netflix, films that have been made for Disney. You're contending with the likes of Wes Anderson, Pedro Almodovar, John Travolta. So I think this year is quite unique in the competition. But what's wonderful to see is that these small independent films sit amongst them. And that can work in one of 2 ways. It brings a larger audience to our smaller independent films, but it makes the competition a little bit more fierce. But us and one of the other British films, we're the only 2 films that have been shortlisted for Oscar and BAFTA, which is just phenomenal.
And obviously, as producer, Michael, when did you kind of come into this project? What was your was it from the beginning, or were you kind of brought in later?
I guess you could say I was in from the beginning, but not. George and I worked together on Casualty. I'm an actor by trade, and George was directing an episode of Casualty, and I was producing another short film at the time that he was directing, and we were 2 days away from shooting, and I
wasn't directing that film, Mike.
No, you weren't directing. No, sorry, George wasn't directing that film. He was directing me at Casualty. He was directing an episode of Casualty. And normally I don't really have my phone on set and what have you. But because we were 2 days away from filming, I was just constantly on my phone, sorting insurance out, sorting the camera package out. And at one point, and George didn't know what I was doing. And so, I went over as respectful to the director. I said, look, it's not normally like me to be on my phone, but I just want you to know I'm shooting at the weekend and I'm trying to sort everything out. Thankfully, George is a huge champion of independent filmmaking and filmmaking as a whole, and was interested in what I was doing. So I spoke to him about what I was doing, and then he sat on that for about 10 seconds. And then he shouted across the room and went, "I've got a short you can read." Emailed it to me, and I read it, and instantly, I messaged him straight away. I said, "Look, all 15, 16 pages of this script make you smile." And we read many short films and feature films that they're so heavy in their narrative but the One Note Man, from the minute you start reading it, makes you smile. And my aim with it, always from reading it the very first time, is that I could visualize an audience clapping along with the musicians at the end of the film, and if I could pull that off, then it's a success. And that's happened. It's been amazing. When we played at Cannes, we had a lovely message from the director of Cannes Indie Film Festival last week, and it did really well there. We won the audience award and best film, and he emailed us to say that in all his years of directing that program, he's never seen an audience on its feet clapping. And it all happened at the end of the film. They just went with it so much that the audience were up clapping with the musicians. So messages like that are just invaluable.
I mean, that's such a great, amazing thing to have achieved. And you're right as well. Like our site, UK Film Review, gets so many films, indie films, sent to us, and they are often very heavy. And that's absolutely fine. There's some great stories there. But when you get something that does come along that's like a bright light, and it's really the energy of this film is something very unique, it just stands out. It really does stand out. And obviously, we talked about the shortlisting, and I think it's doing very well critically, and that's amazing. I'm sure professionally that's a really lovely thing to have. But when you hear that thing about the audience reacting that way, it almost kind of means more. It almost kind of means, look, this is real. It's not just like a professional strategic thing. This is a real genuine article film that gets that reaction. That must be such a lovely feeling to have both sides.
Before Christmas, so a huge part of how this film was able to be made was thanks to Ian McKellen Producer Fund, who normally he has a producer fund for theatres, up and coming producers of theatre. And I pitched this film to them because I knew that it was a film that encompassed all elements of the arts. And cinematic orchestra and live performances of film with live orchestras are something that are very in at the moment, but maybe not accessible to a younger audience who don't want to sit through Gladiator played with a live audience, and they're not old enough to. So it was an ideal opportunity. So I pitched it to Ian's producer fund that we would present the film to an audience of a younger audience, and for them to have their first experience of cinematic orchestra. It's only a 20-minute film. So before Christmas, we did exactly that. We had an orchestra live on stage playing the score, and we invited schools in Wales to come, and it was all free. And it was just one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. We had a packed out audience of kids that all came in the Christmas spirit, and we had them on stage playing with the orchestra. They played some instruments, they were conducting each other and things like that. And then we played them the film. That exact thing happened. We got to the end of the film, and I was at the top looking down, and at the moment all the audience started clapping in the film with the orchestra. I looked down, and an audience of 200 kids were all clapping in time to the music, and they were all it's a brilliant thing to see.
Which is why the cinematic experience must never die, and why we need to make it our mission to keep going to the movies and to pass it on to our kids, because that collective experience, that collective energy of an audience who have paid money, who have gotten into their cars and have driven a distance and gone to the movies to see a movie and have paid to sit there together, that collective experience is unmatched. And screens are getting bigger in homes, and the sound systems are getting bigger and better, and they're great, but nothing matches that. And this is something that we all have to strive and fight to keep alive, keep cinema alive.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and I definitely couldn't. I wouldn't try. I think you're absolutely right, and with the live orchestra element, that's something which it made this kind of feel like a bit like a timeless piece, because obviously you're not really weighing it too much narratively or with dialogue, and it did feel reminiscent of some of the silent films we used to watch and early cinema, Chaplin, things like that. That it was kind of,
now you're talking.
It felt very kind of broad. It felt like a broad cinematic experience,
Yes.
And it does feel, having spoken to you, George, that was probably intentional.
But here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
You're right. You're so right about this, and I'm excited. You talk about it, and I get excited because I love old Hollywood movies. It's really, really important to me to study the grandfathers of cinema and let their knowledge seep into my own cinematic voice. I do believe that somehow, even subconsciously, they contribute a great deal. So I'm a huge fan of, as you said, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Moreau, a great German director who made a film in 1927 called Sunrise, A Story of Two Humans. And it's just the most extraordinary example of visual innovation and technical achievement 100 years ago almost. And I'm watching it and I'm so involved emotionally. I'm thinking, if this guy can do it 100 years ago, I better get off my ass and get some real guns going here. But also later, William Wyler, Ford, David Lean, Hitchcock, huge influence, and the movie brats moving on to the 60s and 70s, of course, Spielberg, Scorsese, De Palma, all those guys. Just great. And all my favorite movies in films are movies without dialogue. And they're all moments which moved me emotionally without the use of dialogue, utilizing cinema's three most powerful tools, in my opinion: performance, image, and music. So with this film, it was the perfect opportunity to apply this mindset, which in any case is a great mindset to have whenever you're directing anything. I think don't show it if you don't say it. I'm sorry, don't say it if you can show it. But more so with a film with no dialogue. So absolutely, all the films I've watched all my life, I think, have very much influenced me into a mindset of economy and subtraction. So get rid of all the frills and the fancy stuff and the camera moves, and just be as simplistic as possible to let performance shine and really to tell the story as cleanly as possible.
I think the film does pay homage to that, but it also keeps in keeping with its origins, which is the Bateman sketch. The Bateman cartoon sketch has no bubbles. There's no dialogue. So it's just told with imagery. So there's no character names. So exactly like that in our scripts, there's no character names. He's the one-note man. She's the violinist. And also there's no dialogue because there's no dialogue in the cartoon. So it pays homage to that as well.
And it makes the film universal, right? And that's something that I think audiences and festivals and anyone is going to be looking for, is that universal appeal of a film. With that in mind, what's the plan for the film? Obviously, I'm not saying if, when you win the Oscar and the BAFTA, what's the plan for the One Note Man? Where's it going to end up?
Well, I'm currently, in terms of platforms and all that, Mike, but you better answer that.
Well, we've signed over. It's with the distribution company now, so it's a brilliant team at Network Island TV who represent a number of the previous Oscar winners. Not that I'm putting us in that category yet.
I did.
But yeah. So they're an amazing team, and look, our aim with it was always that it could be an internationally recognised film. It's a film that you can put anywhere. Music is the language of it, and imagery and stuff. So this can go on any platform in any country, on aeroplanes, on, you know, it can be anywhere, and it's accessible to anybody. There's no language barriers. So who knows? You know, with all these things, short films, selling short films, historically has been a bit of a battle. But I think we're moving forward with that, and there's plenty of opportunities and a desire, especially with, you know, streaming and our attention span being the way it is. Short films are now coming into their forefront, and I think it's a market that a lot of people are tapping into. So yeah, fingers crossed. Because of that internationally accessible language of the film, there's no limits to where it can go.
Fantastic. And you're right. We, in the last few years, when we've been, especially maybe post-COVID, bigger talent being in these films has really lifted profiles. Like one of the films we really loved at a festival we did a couple of years ago had Toby Jones in it. And I love Toby Jones as an actor. I think he's brilliant. And to see him in this 20-minute film, I thought this should be on Netflix. Like, you imagine that popping up and people would click it. And we've always been strong advocates of short films, like not just as these like stepping stones to becoming the feature length. It's just in their own right, they are incredible pieces of art when done to be that way. Sometimes it's like a proof of concept, right? It's like an idea that you want to develop, and you kind of have to deliver it like that first. With The One Note Man, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel that you could ever make this a feature. It wouldn't work, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, who knows? You may be right, but I'm certainly going to give it a try.
I was going to say, if it wins the Oscar, you're going to have to, right? Someone's going to come with that
Yeah,
briefcase full of money and say, "Look, you've got to try at least."
Well, without the briefcase, I think I've found an angle which I'm really enjoying, and so we'll take it each step at a time. I'm writing the script as we speak, and hopefully we'll have something to show people. So, but you never know with these things. But I'm really enjoying the journey, so I'll give it a try.
If anyone can do it, I think your team, George, who you've got there, I think we'll be there right, you know, straight at the front at the cinema to watch it, you know, straight at the front and center.
I think what's happened over the last few years, though, with just touching on that thing about, you know, bigger stars signing on to these projects, is that we've seen in the last, well, 4 or 5 years, particularly going back to, you know, Silent Child, and then there is Ahmed film recently, and then Irish Goodbyes, that these particularly British short films seem to have done really well on this platform. And you know, doing one of these short films isn't taxing on these people, and it gives them an opportunity to lend their status to us in order to further our careers. They've all started where, you know, we're a young production company, and also you just do not know where these projects ended up. You know, where we find ourselves now is just phenomenal. But and I think that is very appealing to people of Jason's stature now, and Ian to jump on board and what have you. Is that what's the harm? It lends their status to our project, which can only lift it. And you just never know where they're going to end up.
100% agree. And you were saying earlier, you know, about the mix of shortlist with the Oscars, it being big films and smaller films, that often when these key names, these talent names do get involved, it really lifts everybody up. It just kind of goes, do you know what? Actually, they're part of the industry. They were where these people were, and them helping them out. And also, I do think there is a value to a lot of these more established actors who are able to kind of go in and learn from people that are at the earlier part of their career, but that are often maybe doing stuff that's new that they didn't do, or that they don't know about. Technology obviously has changed as well a lot. I mentioned Toby Jones, and he had said that actually it was a great chance for him to go and work with like a fresh crew that were starting out with an idea and learn like what it is that they're doing. So I think this is such a rewarding process. But yeah, no, it's a fabulous result, guys.
I think as long as you stick to what you've promised, you're kind, you look after people, you show what this project means to you, then people get behind it. I mean, when we filmed in Birmingham, and Jason was, you know, you spend the whole however few months before you get to know Jason, talking about how you're gonna, you know, you have to look after him, and we want to make sure that it's amazing that he's doing this for us. We have to do this, that, and the other. By the end of the shoot, he was in my front living room, which was being used as his dressing room, and the kids running in and out asking him to play Mr. Shakespeare. So, and he was willing to do it. You know, you become close to these people in such a short amount of time, and all that worry beforehand about you bringing on a star to be in your project kind of goes out the window, because they've all been where we are. They've all started out and wanting to craft a career for themselves. So, that's what's wonderful about our industry, is that we all get it and we're all willing to scratch each other's back, and the arts and our world is all better for that, because we're all supportive.
Fantastic. Guys, I want to say a big thank you for bringing the film and for being with me today. Yeah, like I said, we'll wait for the announcement when you win, and then we can all celebrate. It's going to be great. Yeah,
let's get nominated first.
Thanks, Jed.